When my son, Ethan, died, the house became a stranger. The silence wasn't ordinary, it was alive. It crept through the halls like something feral, breathing softly against the walls, waiting for me to speak so it could swallow the sound. The floors groaned when I moved, as though the house resented the weight of a man who was still here when his son wasn't. I used to wake up to the smell of coffee and hear Ethan humming in the kitchen. He had this way of turning the smallest routine into music. Now the only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional click of the pipes, small reminders that something still functioned, even when everything else didn't. I sat in the living room we built together, with floors polished by our arguments and laughter, bookshelves filled with his restless curiosity. He used to say books were the only furniture that never grew old. I looked at them now and felt like they were mocking me, frozen in time, while I was aging by the hour. That's when Lydia came down the stairs. She wasn't wearing black, not even close. A white silk blouse, half-buttoned, hung loosely around her shoulders. Her perfume, something floral and heavy, filled the air before her words did. Her hair was perfect, not a strand out of place. "We need to start reorganizing," she said, scrolling through her phone like she was checking stock prices. "There's a lot of dead weight in this place." Dead weight. That's what she called it. I didn't answer. The words wouldn't come. She didn't even look at me, just paced across the rug Ethan loved, the one with wine stains from his last birthday. Her heels clicked like a metronome, marking the end of something sacred. Ethan's body was barely cold, and already she was carving up his life like a business deal. She stopped near the window, adjusting her blouse. "You can take whatever personal things you want. Just don't clutter the house." The house. Not our house. Not his house. The possessive tone was deliberate. I could hear it, like she wanted me to know I didn't belong anymore. "Lydia," I said finally, my voice sounding older than it ever had, "maybe we should wait. Just a little." "The funeral was." "Was what?" she interrupted. "A week ago. We can't live in a museum of grief forever." Her phone buzzed again. She smiled faintly, thumb gliding over the screen. The way her lips curved wasn't grief, it was distraction. Desire, maybe. The same kind of expression she used to give Ethan at dinner when she wanted him to notice her. I hated myself for noticing her that way now. She caught me looking and didn't flinch. "What?" she asked, as if daring me to say something. I looked away, ashamed of the sudden pulse of heat that rose in me. The way her blouse moved when she crossed her arms. The scent of her skin lingering like smoke. It was wrong, disgustingly wrong, but grief does strange things to a man. It blurs the lines between what he's lost and what still tempts him. She sighed. "I'll call the movers in 2 days. Ethan wouldn't want this place to rot." Ethan. She said his name with such practiced ease, like a token to justify her cruelty. That night I wandered the house. Every room had changed its shape. The kitchen was colder. The study still smelled faintly of his cologne. His jacket hung on the back of the chair where he left it last, creases still forming the ghost of his shoulders. I touched it once, then again, pressing the fabric to my face like it could give me back a heartbeat. From upstairs, I heard her footsteps. Slow, careful. The floorboards creaked in, that rhythm you recognize when you've lived with someone too long. Then a soft sound. The opening of her door. I shouldn't have listened, but I did. The faint rustle of sheets, a sigh. Not of sadness, of comfort, of release. I could picture her lying there, the glow of her phone lighting her face, maybe texting whoever had already replaced Ethan in the hollow of her bed. And still, part of me envied whoever that was. The thought disgusted me so much I went downstairs and poured myself a drink. The whiskey burned like punishment. When I turned around, she was standing in the doorway, barefoot now, robe loosely tied, the silk edges glinting against the light. "You should get some sleep," she said quietly. I nodded, but didn't move. Her eyes met mine, and for a second, neither of us blinked. There was something raw there, anger, exhaustion, maybe something darker. "I can't," I admitted. "Me neither," she said, and for the briefest moment, the air between us felt like static. Then she turned, climbing the stairs again, her robe shifting with each step. I stared longer than I should have. When her door closed, the house went quiet again, too quiet. I sat there until dawn, surrounded by the remnants of Ethan's life and the lingering perfume of his widow. The house wasn't just silent anymore. It was watching. 2 days later the house woke before I did. Metal clatter, wheels on wood, the bark of men who work by the hour. A message from Lydia waited on my phone. Movers at 9. Please be present to identify personal effects. By the time I reached the front walk, a white truck idled like a patient predator. Lydia stood on the porch in a fitted charcoal dress with a precise slit. Clipboard. Gloss. Not a widow, a project manager. We'll start with the study, she told the foreman. To me, you can supervise the sentimental piles. The study stays, I said. She moved past me. Perfume over dust. No, Henry. It doesn't. This isn't a mausoleum. Inside, everything was loud. Tape tore, cardboard yawned. Books thumped. A mover reached for our framed photo from the first fishing trip. The river mean and bright, Ethan grinning. Stop. I took the picture myself. This stays. It doesn't match the new design, Lydia said. It matches his life. For a second her expression wavered, then sealed. She stepped closer, voice lower. This is my home now. I won't argue about aesthetics. The nearness of her got under my skin, a splinter I couldn't ignore. Grief blurs the line between disgust and want. I hated that my body remembered her anyway, the hum that lives in proximity, sex braided with power. Pack the journals, she told the men. All of them. I blocked the shelf. No, Henry. She set the clipboard on the desk and leaned her hip against it. You're making this harder than it has to be. It should be hard, I said. This room is the last place he. The sentence fractured. Her fingers closed around my wrist, cool, decisive. For a heartbeat my pulse kicked under her thumb. We can do this civilly, she murmured. Or you can make a scene. You made the scene. She gestured, the tide resumed. Books vanished in neat rows of absence. His black notebooks went into a crate labeled office contents. When the diplomas came down, the wall exhaled, and I had to step away. There's a condo in Calder Square, she said, following. Short-term lease. I forwarded the listing. I'm not a stray you can place. You were a guest, she said. Now, the visit's over. The words fell like a gavel. In the kitchen, the morning light made the marble cold. Lydia leaned on the island. I'm not your enemy, she said, dismantling my life with calm hands. I'm trying to breathe. So breathe, I said. Just not through his memories. You think I didn't love him? No question mark. I think you like control more than you liked Ethan. Something hard flashed. Control, she said. Do you know what it cost to keep a life from collapsing? Do you know what I held together while he... She cut herself off. While he what? It doesn't matter, she said. Pack your essentials. By noon the study was a strip stage. Pale ghosts of frames haunted the paint. Lydia signed a form. The foreman nodded. Let's divide the remaining items, she said. I don't want to throw away anything you. You want me gone, I said. Own it. She met my eyes. Fine. I want you gone. I went upstairs to Ethan's old room, the one she repainted in the first week. The bed was dressed like a brochure, a color he hated. I folded his jacket, the one that still knew his shoulders, into my suitcase. I added the fishing photo, one of his stupid college mugs, a book he'd annotated to the bone. When I stepped into the hallway, Lydia blocked the light. Keys. You'll change the locks anyway. I will, but I want them back. I dropped them into her palm. Our fingers touched. Electricity, memory, defeat. Under the perfume, the faint salt of skin. I despised the way it moved something in me. She noticed. You don't have to leave today, she said softly. You can stay one more night. In the guest room. While you erase him? I asked. No. For a second, she looked like the woman Ethan married, not the monarch of marble. He kept secrets, she said. So did I. Marriage is a house of closed doors. I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't want to picture rooms I had no right to enter. Sex, lies, necessary silences. Downstairs, they carried the last box. The truck doors slammed. The house rattled its ribs. I wheeled my single suitcase to the entry, past nail holes like tiny wounds. At the threshold, she crossed her arms. "Goodbye, Henry." "Goodbye, Lydia," I said. "This isn't the end." She tilted her head. "Is that a threat?" "A promise," I said. To him. I stepped into the heat. The movers smoked and laughed about nothing. I set the photo on the passenger seat and looked at the house. Our house, his house, her house, one last time. In the rear view, the porch shrank like a stage set, Lydia small and bright in the doorway, a figure I couldn't read. At the motel, the ice machine roared its cheap weather. I set the photo on the wobbly table and poured a plastic cup of something brown. This silence was honest. It had no memory to betray me. My phone buzzed. "Martin Graves, call me tonight. We should talk." I called. "Henry," he said, voice low. "I'm sorry about today, but I think Ethan saw this coming." The ember in my chest turned over. "Tell me." "Not yet," he said. "For now, she needs to believe she's untouchable." I stared at Ethan's grin in the river light and felt something align. I wasn't a man being cast out of a temple. I was a man being forced into the open, where the ground is wider and the paths are honest. I let the drink burn its way down, set the cup aside, and began to imagine how to outlast a queen who mistook the throne for the kingdom. The motel smelled like rain and bleach, the kind of scent that pretends to be clean but can't quite wash away what it's seen. The flickering neon outside my window blinked welcome every 3 seconds, like a cruel joke aimed at men who've run out of homes. The bed sagged in the middle, the lamp buzzed, and the air conditioner coughed out a tired breath every few minutes. I sat on the edge of the mattress, staring at the same suitcase I'd packed 3 nights ago, a single jacket, a photo, a book, and the jacket that still carried Ethan's scent. It felt like I'd packed my entire life into a box meant for loss. I poured a drink from the cheap bottle I'd bought at the gas station. It wasn't whiskey, not really. It was something that burned hard enough to remind me I was still alive. The phone rang. I didn't expect it. No one calls a man who's lost everything. "Henry," said the voice on the other end, soft, steady, familiar. "It's Martin Graves." Martin had been Ethan's lawyer, and before that, his mentor, maybe even the closest thing to a second father. His voice was the same as always, calm, deliberate, but with a hesitation tonight that told me he wasn't calling just to console. "Martin," I said. "It's late." "I know," he replied. But I didn't want to wait. "There's something you should hear." The words tightened something inside me. "Go on." He hesitated. "Ethan saw this coming, Henry. All of it." I stood, the floorboards creaking under my bare feet. "What do you mean?" "I can't say everything over the phone," Martin said. "But he left contingencies. Lydia doesn't know. She can't know yet. For now, she needs to believe she's untouchable." I looked around the room. Peeling wallpaper, a dead fly in the lampshade, a window that reflected only the ghost of an old man. Untouchable. I repeated. "She threw me out of my own son's house." "I know," he said quietly. "But trust me, Henry. Ethan planned something. You'll see soon enough. For now, stay quiet. Stay away from her." I hung up and sat there, staring at the phone, wondering how long Ethan had known. Had he told Martin everything? Did he know Lydia would try to erase him so quickly? I thought of her again. Her voice, her perfume, the way she'd looked at me with that mix of pity and power. She wasn't grieving. She was rebranding. And yet, beneath all that control, I'd caught something that didn't fit. A flicker, a crack. I took another drink, trying to smother the image of her in that robe at the top of the stairs, the faint curve of her smile before she disappeared into her room. That image haunted me worse than any ghost could. Outside, rain started to fall, slow at first, then steady, the kind that makes the world sound like it's whispering. I stood at the window, watching it blur the parking lot into a smear of gray. 2 cars, a vending machine, and a couple arguing near the stairwell. That was my new neighborhood. I thought of Ethan, how proud he'd been of that house, of the foundation he'd built, of the life he'd imagined would outlast him. And I thought of Lydia, carving it up piece by piece, calling his dreams dead weight. I set my glass down and the reflection in the window looked back. A man stripped of everything but the will to outlast one more storm. Martin's words replayed in my mind. She needs to believe she's untouchable. That meant only one thing: she wasn't. A slow, bitter satisfaction stirred in me. I'd been sitting in this room thinking I was finished, but now there was purpose again. Something faint, but alive, like a pilot light waiting for gas. I picked up Ethan's photo from the nightstand. He was smiling in it, wind-tousled hair, sun in his eyes. I traced the edge of the frame with my thumb. "What did you see, son?" I whispered. "What did you leave behind?" The rain hit harder, drumming on the roof like impatient fingers. Somewhere in the next room, a couple laughed, a loud, messy laugh, full of life. I couldn't remember the last time the house had sounded like that. I poured the last of the drink and sat back on the bed. The sheets itched, the air felt thick, and the silence pressed down again. But it wasn't the silence of loss anymore. It was something else, the silence before movement, before reckoning. I closed my eyes and saw Lydia's face again, not as the grieving widow, but as the woman she really was: dangerous, beautiful, and utterly certain she had won. For the first time since Ethan's death, I almost smiled. She thought she'd buried me. She had no idea I was still breathing. Martin chose places where no one lingers: back lots, loud diners, cold libraries. He slid folders across tables like a quiet dealer. I brought a notebook I barely used just to anchor my hands. The motel had shaved off my edges. Martin handed some back. "Start with this," he said at Eleanor's diner. He tapped a manila envelope. "Bank statements. Lydia's spending is a bonfire. Paper smell, ink, and consequence. Private jets. Consultants with champagne menus. Renovations priced like small wars." "She didn't wait," I said. "She didn't think she had to," he answered. "Ethan built guardrails. She's driving through them." He flipped another folder. Dates. Audio transcripts. My son's name typed where he'd never read it again. "When did he tell you?" I asked. "Months before he died. He wasn't afraid of her, Henry." Disappointed. Martin folded his straw. He told me to assume she'd treat grief like a business window. I saw her again in that white blouse the week of the funeral. Perfume heavy enough to be a verdict. The memory worked its old poison. Resentment braided with heat. Lust is grief's rude cousin. It shows up uninvited and eats the good food. "What are the contingencies?" I asked. "Multiple." He moved liquid assets into a trust bound to performance and ethics thresholds. "She has access only if she meets both. She's met neither." He showed language that sounded like my son inside the law: moral fitness, ratios, audits. "If spending exceeds income 3 months in a row, I flag it. If she sells certain shares without board clearance, I flag it. If she rebrands vanity purchases as charitable gifts. She calls a florist a scholarship and buys the vase," I said. "Exactly. We document and wait." Waiting scraped at me. I wanted to smash marble into gravel. But Ethan had asked for patience, and even gone, he still commanded me. We met again in a library where the AC turned breath to frost. Martin slid a flash drive and transcript. "Recordings," he said. "Not illegal. Calls where he asked for transparency." She laughed. I read lines where she told him he didn't understand wealth, that the house needed to be realigned to status. The words were knives wrapped in silk. I remembered her laugh in that kitchen. Remembered Ethan watching her like a difficult theorem. Jealousy arrived late, shame hitchhiking behind it. "You okay?" Martin asked. "No." "Good," he said. "I worry about people who say yes." A week later, her name lit his phone. He turned it face down. "She's panicking." A transfer froze. She'll purr, then bare teeth. She rotates tactics like shoes. Will shouting help her? It buys time. We won't sell any. The waitress refilled our cups, shoulder grazing my sleeve. Nothing gesture, everything effect. I hadn't been touched since the funeral, except by accident. Cinnamon gum, rain, and skin. My body answered like a struck wire. The word sex moved through me, simple and alive, proof that I still existed. "Bored minutes," Martin continued, oblivious. Your son anticipated a posthumous liquidation attempt. He forced any large sale to carry educational earmarks. Educational. Scholarships, labs, apprenticeships. Not plaques. Infrastructure. Something unclenched in me. He knew what to do with the money. He knew what to do with time, Martin said. Money's just velocity. That night, I listened to Ethan's voice from a flash drive. Calm, untheatrical. The sound of a mind that preferred steps to speeches. He told Lydia he would never police taste, only the betrayal of purpose. She called him naive, then sweetly asked for another card because the marble guy had a cancellation. I paused the audio and stared at the motel mirror, a man held together by tape and coffee, wanting a fight he could win. At 2 a.m. my phone buzzed. "Henry," Lydia said, voice low and night warm. "Martin won't call me back. That's his schedule. This is you. You've poisoned him. You did that yourself." She laughed brittle. "You hate me so cleanly. It almost turns me on." Heat rose, unwanted. "Don't." "Why?" "I've seen how you look at me. Grief and desire share a bed." A pause, then velvet. "Come by. We'll talk like adults. About the study you guard. I remember where you stood when you said no. Your hand shook. I like that. My body betrayed me. Memory is a narcotic." "Good night, Lydia," I said, and hung up like slamming a door. Morning, coffee, paper, purpose. She called. I told Martin. "Charm, threat, innuendo," he said. "All three." "Don't meet her alone," he said. "She's most dangerous when she wants to be understood." We spread documents until the table looked like weather. The blueprint emerged, audits that triggered like tripwires, charitable off-ramps that turned excess into classrooms, clauses that braided her into responsibility or cut her loose. At the center sat a foundation with my name waiting in its bylaws, like a locked room only I could open. "Why me?" I asked. "Because you spend on people, not plaques," Martin said. "Ethan told me you once fixed a neighbor's fence before your own. He wanted that instinct baked into policy." I traced my name on the page the way you touch a scar. "What happens next?" "Nothing," he said. "And then everything. She'll feel the ground tilt and run faster. Let her. Our job is to keep the stopwatch." Outside, the ordinary world went on. Bus-eye, a kid dragging a stick along a fence, a dog convinced of its importance. Somewhere, the mirror palace flung sunlight like knives. Exiled or not, I carried a map now. My son had built a labyrinth for a queen who mistook every wall for a mirror. I had, at last, found the thread. I would play the long game. I would polish patience into a weapon. Lydia's empire began to rot from the inside, not with thunder, but with whispers. It started with rumors among her circle. The decorator she'd flaunted on social media wasn't paid. The accountant who filed her taxes had resigned. The florist, of all people, posted something vague about unethical clients and bounce transfers. Lydia ignored it all, brushing off the smoke while the fire ate her feet. Martin called one morning. "It's starting," he said, voice low and careful. "The first freeze hit her personal account last night. She'll notice by noon." I almost smiled. Almost. "So the system works." "Your son's system," Martin corrected. He left traps in plain sight, thresholds, clauses, ratios. When she pushed past them, the trust kicked in. Automatic oversight. It's beautiful. Ethan had always loved puzzles, even as a boy. He once built a mechanical box that would lock itself when you opened it wrong, just because he liked watching cause and effect meet like lovers in a tragic play. Now Lydia was discovering what it felt like to be inside one of his designs. By the end of the week, her house, Ethan's house, looked like a showroom for denial. Chandeliers, lit rooms, no one entered. The smell of wine and roses lingered from parties she could no longer afford. I drove past once, late at night, headlights sweeping across the marble facade. She was standing by the window in a silk robe, phone in one hand, a glass of something red in the other. The light caught her face. Fury and fear blended into something strangely seductive. I hated that I still felt it. Hated that I wanted to see her undone, not just beaten. Martin and I met at the usual diner. He had the look of a man carrying news that could feed the soul. "She's called me 10 times, he said. Then her lawyer called. Then her accountant. She's realizing the trust isn't just paused, it's sealed. Meaning, she can't liquidate, can't sell. She's asset-rich, cash-poor, and desperate." "Good." He looked at me for a long moment. "You're enjoying this." "I'm remembering," I said. Remembering how she stood at that door, telling me my visit was over. Martin leaned back, stirring his coffee. "Just don't let vengeance feel like justice. Ethan didn't build this to humiliate her. He built it to protect what mattered." I nodded, though part of me didn't believe him. Maybe Ethan had wanted both protection and punishment. Maybe he'd known Lydia well enough to understand that taking her power would hurt more than taking her pride. Later that week, I got a call I didn't expect. "Henry," she said, "we need to talk." Her voice was sharp, but there was something else, something that trembled just beneath the surface. "There's nothing to talk about." "You think I don't know you're behind this?" she hissed. "You and that smug little lawyer. You think you can box me in?" I didn't answer. Silence has weight if you let it sit long enough. Then she said something that cut through me. "Ethan didn't love you as much as you think. He pitied you. He told me once you were like a broken mirror, reflecting everyone but yourself." I hung up. Slowly. The old rage came back, but it burned differently now, steadier, colder. I poured myself a drink and sat by the motel window, watching the rain blur the parking lot. Somewhere inside that storm of marble and perfume, Lydia was realizing her kingdom was built on credit. 2 nights later, Martin texted, "It's happening faster than expected." I met him downtown. He looked almost amused. "She tried to sell the company shares," he said. "Claimed she needed liquidity for renovations. The board flagged it. Automatic audit. What happens now? She'll be suspended as primary beneficiary pending review. When they confirm the misuse, the clause triggers." "The clause," I repeated almost reverently. He nodded. "All remaining assets transfer to the Walker Foundation. You, Henry, become executor." I should have felt triumph. Instead, I felt hollow. Justice has no taste when it finally arrives, just the echo of everything it had to consume to get there. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Ethan's face, that grin of his when he'd fix something broken, a toaster, a bike chain, a life. Maybe this was his final repair. But Lydia wasn't done. The next morning, she arrived at Martin's office unannounced. He called me afterward. "She's unraveling," he said. Threats, tears, the whole performance. She demanded to see the will again. "Let her," I said. "She said something strange before she left," Martin added. She said, "He thinks I don't know what Ethan really hid." The word stuck to me like static. What Ethan really hid. Was there more? Another layer beneath the contingencies. Another secret even Martin hadn't seen? Ethan had always loved complexity. Maybe the blueprint we thought we'd uncovered was only the first door. I looked at the clock, 2:14 a.m. The motel was silent except for the hum of the old fridge. I turned off the light and sat in the dark, letting the idea grow teeth. If Lydia was bluffing, she'd burn herself trying to prove it. But if she wasn't, then Ethan's game wasn't over. And neither was mine. I learned the discipline of absence. No calls. No visits. I became a rumor in my own life, a man who once lived in marble and now kept company with a sputtering air conditioner and a neon welcome that couldn't decide if it meant it. I let Lydia speak into rooms and hear nothing back. Silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. It forces the other player to invent your words, and people confess to their own imagination. Martin thrived in quiet. He took her calls with the patience of a lakeshore, letting waves break and roll back. "Everything's in process," he would say, the same phrase in a dozen shades. He never defended or accused, only pointed to policies, provisions, time. He let the machine Ethan built be the loudest voice. Her tactics changed daily. Morning charm, dusk rage, midnight threats dressed like love letters with knives. A rumor bloomed that I'd forged documents. Cute, given my handwriting looks like a doctor prescribing penance. She courted a board member at a candlelit dinner, and posted a photo of laughter that looked almost honest. I scrolled past and told myself the jolt I felt was tactical. It wasn't. Grief is chemical. Desire rides the same wire. She texted me once. A single line. We should settle this privately. New number, old tone. I didn't answer. 20 minutes later came a photo, just the edge of the study desk, the pale ghost where Ethan's diploma had hung, a glass with fingerprints fogging the side. Not explicit, but it suggested a body just out of frame. She was good at that, erotic suggestion as negotiation. She could make the word sex feel like a clause. I powered the phone off and held it until it cooled. The war was fought with paperwork and delayed transfers, but the battlefield lived in small gestures. The decorator left a comment. Some clients don't understand timelines. A bakery offered Queen's crumble, raspberry tart smashed into a glass, someone's joke. Lydia adapted. She started driving herself. Flats instead of heels. She learned the weight of grocery bags. Sometimes I parked 2 blocks away and watched the house, windows cracked, radio low. The place had changed posture. Light didn't linger there. I saw her on the porch one evening. Hair undone by wind she used to pay someone to tame. She was beautiful the way storms are, truthful, hungry. When she wrapped her robe tighter, a muscle in my jaw tightened too. I left before I could do something I'd have to confess to my dead son. Hold, Martin would remind me, like a chess coach with a long memory. We met under fluorescent lights and in the shadow corners of parking structures. He brought updates, each a bead on a string we were winding around her wrists. She appealed to the trustees, he said. Denied. Another day. She wants to audit the auditors. One morning he slid a printed email across the table. Lydia to a friend, glossy defiance over hairline panic. At night I played voicemails from Ethan. Little dispatches. Dad, the plumber's late again. Save me a seat Sunday. The last ended with a laugh that folded me in half. I'd place the phone on my chest and treat his laugh like a shield. Then I'd dream of Lydia stepping into the motel room, hair damp from rain, saying my name low enough to ask permission and high enough to make the question optional. I woke disgusted with myself and wanting. She tried pity next through a mutual acquaintance. She's alone in that big place. It echoes. I almost wrote back that houses don't echo. Hearts do. Instead, I returned to the room where the ice machine sang its ugly hymn, untucked the 2 tight sheets, and recited the plan. Wait for missteps, document, confirm, execute. Ethan hadn't left me vengeance. He'd left a procedure. Weeks passed. Cicadas stitched their electric thread from pole to maple. Her dinners stopped. Her circle thinned. Online, she performed minimalism. Grateful for small things, she posted under coffee and a paperback. Comments swarmed with hearts. Martin texted, "Be not deceived." I wasn't. Humility that announces itself is marketing. Then something shifted, not in the accounts, in her. Martin noticed first. She's asking intelligent questions, he said. Real ones. Who benefits from the foundation, how oversight works. I felt the change like a pressure drop before rain. The enemy was studying the terrain. That's when you either escalate or trust the architecture. We trusted Ethan. She called that night from yet another number. Henry, she said, voice scraped raw. I'm not calling to fight. I didn't speak. You think I'm a monster, but monsters don't sit awake at 3 a.m. counting breath like pennies. A long inhale. I hear him in this house. The absence makes a sound. Against my will, I pictured her in bed, one knee drawn up, the sheet a diagonal across her hip. My pulse answered like a recruit. Good night, Lydia, I said. Sleep if you can. Come see me, she whispered. Not to bargain. To remember him. We could. The sentence frayed into suggestion. Sex as seance. A blade with a kiss at the handle. No, I said. Not yet. After the call, I walked the corridor, past vending machines and carpet that remembered better decades. Revenge is loud at first and almost silent at the end. Justice is the opposite. It begins without an audience and ends with one you didn't invite. We were nearing a hinge. I could feel it in the way Martin's emails grew shorter, and the bank's replies grew longer. "I'll let you know when," he said after another of her performances. "There will be a day that looks like all the others, until it doesn't. Until then, I kept my post, a ghost with a ledger, a father with a plan. I let the silence speak. I learned to love its grammar, the way it punctuates without a sound. When I finally slept, it was to the metronome of a future tightening like a knot we would pull in one clean motion, leaving either a bow or a noose, depending on how she chose to wear it. Martin's office sat on the 9th floor of a glass building that reflected the city like a guilty conscience. When I stepped out of the elevator, the air smelled of polished wood and power, expensive, restrained. Lydia was already there, sitting in one of the leather chairs outside his door. She looked different, thinner. Her eyes were hidden behind sunglasses, though it wasn't sunny. She held her phone like a weapon she no longer knew how to use. When she saw me, her mouth tightened. "You came." I didn't answer. Words between us were currency that had lost its value. Martin's secretary opened the door. "He's ready for you both." Inside, the blinds were half closed, slicing the sunlight into clean, sharp lines. Martin stood behind his desk, a folder waiting beside him like a loaded gun. Lydia sat first. Her perfume was subtler than usual, but it still hit me like a memory I hadn't earned. "I'll keep this short," Martin said, his tone clipped and formal. "We've reviewed the audit results. The findings are conclusive." Lydia crossed her legs, trying for poise. "Then let's stop pretending and get to the part where you fix it." Martin looked at her for a long moment, not with anger, but pity. "There's nothing to fix. Ethan structured everything exactly for this outcome." Her composure cracked. "Don't start with that righteous bullshit. He wouldn't do this to me." "He did," Martin said. "He anticipated reckless spending, misuse of trust funds, and moral negligence." "Moral?" She laughed, but it came out sharp, almost desperate. "I didn't kill him, if that's what you're implying." "No one said you did." "Then what is this?" she snapped. "A morality test? A vendetta?" Martin opened the folder and began to read, his voice steady. Clause 7.2. Should the beneficiary engage in acts deemed detrimental to the preservation of assets, or exhibit conduct unbecoming of fiduciary stewardship, all holdings revert to the Walker Foundation. Her face drained. "You're lying." I finally spoke. "He wasn't the man you thought he was, Lydia. You played a game he designed." Her head turned toward me, slowly. "You think this is justice? You think he'd want you to humiliate me?" "I think he wanted to protect what mattered," I said. She leaned forward, eyes bright with venom. "You're enjoying this. Don't pretend otherwise. You've wanted me gone since the funeral." "No," I said. "I wanted you to care. That's not the same thing." She laughed again, brittle. "You were always jealous of him. Of us." The words hit like a blade, because somewhere inside, they weren't entirely false. Martin slid a document across the table. "This is the final codicil. Ethan's last will, confirmed and notarized before his passing." She didn't touch it. "I won't sign anything." "You don't have to," Martin said. "It's already in effect." The silence that followed was heavy enough to bend the air. Finally, she whispered, "He planned this." "Yes," I said. "Every step." She stood abruptly, knocking over her chair. "You bastards. You self-righteous." "Sit down, Lydia," Martin said softly. "You're only making this worse." Her hands trembled. "You can't take everything. I earned part of it." Martin closed the folder. "You earned the allowance. $2,000 a month, contingent upon verified employment." Her breath caught. 2,000. I saw the realization dawn, the fall from silk to soil. Martin continued, his voice merciless in its calm. "The rest will fund the Walker Foundation for technical education, with Henry as administrator." That was Ethan's final wish. She looked at me, hatred raw and beautiful in her eyes. "He made you God." "No," I said quietly. "He made me custodian." For a long moment, she just stood there, shaking. Then her knees gave out, and she sat back down, breathing hard, tears smudging her makeup. "I loved him," she whispered, "more than he ever knew." I wanted to believe her. But love isn't what you say when the money's gone. Martin rose, signaling the end. You'll receive written notice within 72 hours. I suggest you prepare. Lydia stood, chin trembling, and smoothed her skirt. You think this is over, she said, glaring at both of us. You've no idea what he left behind. She turned and walked out, her heels striking the floor like a countdown. When the door closed, I finally exhaled. Martin didn't look up from the folder. She's finished, he said. Maybe, I said. But she's not broken. There's a difference. He nodded. There always is. That night, back at the motel, I couldn't sleep. The victory felt like sand, slipping through my hands as fast as it came. I poured a drink and stared at the ceiling, thinking of Lydia's last words. You've no idea what he left behind. Maybe she was bluffing. Maybe she wasn't. Either way, the war wasn't over. It was only changing shape. Martin liked ceremonies to be clean. No speeches, no theatrics, just the law cut to shape. He invited a notary, closed the blinds, and set a folder in the center of the walnut table. It's time, he said. Lydia arrived without sunglasses, with a glittering defiance that looked like jewelry. A simple dress, the kind rich people call effortless. Her throat was bare. I tried not to notice the pulse there. Grief does not erase the body. Neither does victory. I hated that the word sex could still live anywhere near her name. Martin opened the folder. This is the final codicil of Ethan Walker, he said. Executed 1 month before his death, witnessed per statute. Lydia gave a short laugh. Read your script, Martin. He began. The will spoke in my son's cautious, exacting rhythms. In the event that the primary beneficiary demonstrates greed, negligence, or moral unfitness. The language marched, no flourish, no mercy. It named the Walker Foundation for Technical Education, it named me, and it named the conditions under which everything would move from her hands to mine. Lydia stared at the table, then at me. He wouldn't have humiliated me. This isn't humiliation, Martin said. It's stewardship. He turned a page. To my wife, Lydia Walker, a monthly allowance of $2,000 shall be granted, contingent upon verified employment. Failure to maintain employment for 60 days pauses disbursements until compliance is restored. 2,000. She swallowed the number like a stone. You expect me to live on that? I expect you to live, Martin said. Ethan expects you to work. I should have felt clean. Instead, my stomach cinched with a guilty heat. She looked small for the first time, a woman dressed for altitude, learning ground-level math. When her hands trembled, I remembered other tremors, the hitch of her laugh, the robe on her thigh the night after the funeral. Desire is a poor historian. It records sensation, not context. I closed my fists under the table. You made yourself God, she said to me. No, I said. Ethan made a future and asked me to protect it. Protect it from me. Protect it from anyone who forgot why he built it. She looked at the notary, as if the woman might intervene. She didn't. Martin kept reading. Oversight mechanisms, audit triggers, the irrevocable transfer upon confirmed mismanagement. Every sentence drew a circle around the same fact. The palace was no longer hers. Why didn't he tell me? She asked. He tried, Martin said. He asked you to slow down. She smiled without humor. Slow down? Ethan moved mountains and asked me to live on a hillside. He wanted me domestic. I wanted us sovereign. He wanted you partnered, I said. She swung her gaze to me, and for a second the anger softened into something almost human. You think you know what we were like in the dark? The question shocked me. This room was hard edges and boundaries, but her words made it small. Sex, remembered or imagined, changes scale. It reduces law to breath for exactly 1 second. I forced the second to pass. Martin placed the final page on the table. Acknowledgement of receipt, he said. Acceptance isn't required. This is courtesy. Lydia didn't reach for the pen. He left you the kingdom, she said. And me the gate fee. He left me the broom, I said. The floors won't sweep themselves. You'll love looking benevolent while you lock me out. I'll love opening doors to people who never had one. I met her eyes. That's what he loved. She began to laugh, low and bright. Do you truly believe you were his favorite person? No, I said. His favorite person was the next student who solved a problem no one let them try. The laughter died. She signed. The notary stamped. The folder shut with a soft thud. We stood. For a moment we were too close. Her perfume was subdued, salt and skin. It combed old hunger awake. She felt it too. I read it in the way she held still, breath suspended as if the air itself might kiss. My grief turned its head toward her, and I hated that I wanted anything. "Congratulations, Henry," she murmured. "You finally have a house again." "I have work," I said. "And I have a job to find," she replied, words shaped like a dare. "Any openings at your shining school for the fallen queen?" "That would require references," I said. "And humility." Her smile sharpened. "I can learn the second. Men usually supply the first." I let the cruelty pass. "If you ask, I will help you find your footing," I said, surprising myself. "Not for you. For what Ethan loved in you when he still hoped." Something flickered. Hurt pride, maybe, or the outline of a new self. "Keep your charity," she said, but it lacked venom. On the sidewalk, the world had the audacity to glitter. Lydia paused beside me. For a heartbeat, our hands were close enough that a stranger might think we were together. We weren't. We were two people orbiting a man who had managed, even in death, to draw lines no one could cross without consequence. "I hear him," she said quietly, "in the parts you're trying to build and the parts one tried to buy." "I do too," I said. We parted, she to the ground, I to the work. Somewhere, a room waited to be filled with machines and kids who would refuse the ceilings they'd been handed. Somewhere else, a bakery would pin up a help-wanted sign, and a woman who once spoke marble would learn the grammar of a till. Ethan loved equations that balanced themselves. Today the math held. Tomorrow would ask if I could carry it. I walked to the elevator, feeling more guardian than victor. Behind me, Martin gathered the papers, pages we'd swung shut. Ahead of me, stairs, classrooms, labs. The future is not a throne. It is a door with 1,000 knobs. My son had given me one set of keys. I intended to share them until my hands were empty. 6 months after the reading of the will, the house on Windmere Avenue stood stripped of its illusions. The marble Lydia once polished like armor had gone dull. The fountains were dry. I drove past one afternoon, not to gloat, though part of me wanted to, but because old habits are hard to bury. The gates were open. A delivery van idled out front, its sides painted with the cheerful logo of a bakery. I parked 2 blocks away and walked. The smell of yeast and sugar hit me before I saw her. Through the window I caught a glimpse. Lydia in an apron, hair tied back, face pale and bare of its old defenses. She was boxing pastries for a woman who kept checking her watch. Lydia's smile was small, professional, tired. I had seen her perform glamour. This was survival. When the customer left, Lydia stood still for a second, her hands resting on the counter. Then she exhaled, long and slow, as if learning the rhythm of breath all over again. Flour dusted her wrist. There was a streak of jam on her cheek. I could have turned away. I should have. But my feet refused the command. The bell above the door chimed when I stepped inside. Her head jerked up, and for a heartbeat her eyes widened. Then she steadied herself. "We're closing in 10, she said, voice flat but not unkind. "I won't keep you," I said. She hesitated, wiping her hands on a towel. "Of course you'd find me eventually. I wasn't looking." Liar. The word carried no heat. She gestured toward the empty tables. "Sit, then." I did. She poured coffee from a dented thermos, the kind you buy secondhand. "No sugar, right?" she asked. The detail startled me. "You remember." "I remember everything," she said, setting the cup down. "Especially what I ruined." The bitterness in her voice was quieter now, aged like wood left in rain. I studied her face. The hardness was gone, replaced by something more fragile and more real. She noticed my stare and smirked faintly. "What?" Expecting the villain to monologue. "No," I said. "Just surprised you're still standing." She shrugged. "Standing's easy. Living's the hard part." The silence that followed was the truest we'd ever shared. No threats. No weapons disguised as words. Finally she asked, was it worth it? Watching me fall. I didn't push you. Maybe not. But you built the landing. She looked at her hands, palms rough now, the skin cracked. I thought I'd hate you for it. I did. But some nights I almost thank you. For what? For forcing the noise to stop. Her eyes lifted to mine. There was no flirtation this time, no performance. Just exhaustion and an odd, painful honesty. Ethan was too good for me, she said. You know that. I told myself I loved him because I wanted to believe it was possible to love someone good. You did love him, I said quietly. In your own way. My way killed him, she whispered. Or helped the world do it faster. I didn't know what to say. Grief makes liars of everyone. And I was tired of lying. She smiled weakly. I found one of his letters, she said. Hidden in the attic, behind the beam. It wasn't for me. It was for you. My chest tightened. What did it say? Only a line. Her voice faltered, then steadied. If he ever forgives her, tell him to forgive himself first. The words settled between us like ash. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past. Lydia turned toward the sound, blinking back something she didn't want me to see. They'll close soon, she said. I should clean up. I stood. Do you need anything? She laughed, softly this time. You've already given me everything. Even the sentence. The sentence. The one I earned. She looked around the small bakery, its chipped tables, its warmth. This is my prison, Henry. But it's also the first place that's mine. I nodded. Ethan would have liked that. She looked up at me, eyes wet but shining. You think he'd forgive me? He already did, I said. He just wrote it in a language we're still learning to read. We stood there for a moment, caught in a fragile peace neither of us deserved but both accepted. When I left, the bell chimed again. Through the window, I saw her wipe the counter, shoulders straightening as she turned off the lights one by one. The world outside was ordinary. Cars passing, a boy on a bike, the scent of bread cooling in air that didn't care about past lives. I realized that justice wasn't about punishment. It was about silence that could finally rest. As I reached the car, I looked back once more. The lights inside the bakery flickered off, leaving only her silhouette framed by the glow of the street lamp. Smaller, humbler, alive. The queen had fallen. The sentence was served. And for the first time since Ethan's death, I didn't feel the need to look back again. A year after Ethan's death, the Walker Institute for Innovation hummed like a beehive in a cathedral. Sunlight fell through the skylight in honeyed squares, warm on the shoulders of students already rehearsing their futures. The building used to be a derelict factory, bricks stained with machinery, windows boarded like closed eyes. Now it breathed. Glass, steel, corridors lined with printers, soldering stations, whiteboards that refused to stay white. I wore the suit Ethan liked, navy, narrow lapels. On the wall near the stage, his photograph watched with that half-smile that never tipped into smugness. I touched the frame before the podium. It felt superstitious and necessary, like kissing a medal before a race. Welcome, I said. You are the first class to finish a year inside this experiment. I didn't say legacy. That word calcifies. We were not carving his name into stone. We were spending it, like water poured where ground needs greening. Ethan believed talent shouldn't depend on money, I went on. He believed curiosity is a muscle you train until failure becomes form. Parents in good clothes and kids in scuffed sneakers leaned in. I told them about the toaster Ethan took apart at 12, screws sorted into bottle caps, the kitchen full of napkin diagrams. Invention is a kind of love, I said. You study a flaw until you can't bear it, and then you hold out your hands and change it. At the back stood Maya, our new program director, black dress moving like grammar around a thought. She had the scientist's calm and the dancer's ankles. When our eyes met, the current was immediate, adult. Sex didn't feel like trespass anymore. It felt like rain on ground that had finally thawed. I let the wave lift and pass. Later, I promised myself. We handed out small medals pressed from scrap aluminum. Students sprinted through demos, a low-cost soil sensor, a mapping app for wheelchair access by a kid who had never used a staircase, a prosthetic grip printed for a father missing 2 fingers. No one said miracle. We said version 1. We said iterate. We said show me. Between panels, I drifted through labs like a ghost-appointed janitor and judge. The room smelled of solder, coffee, and adolescence. On a whiteboard someone had written, "Safe fail equals true." I took a picture. Ethan would have laughed. After the keynote, the crowds thinned into families and hugs. I found Maya near the stage, studying the students as if arranging them into future teams. Up close, the kind intelligence of her face steadied me. She'd been a roboticist before administration, grease under the nails. "You kept the tension in the speech," she said, "between grief and instruction." "I practice," I said, "every day." She smiled. "Come see the fabrication bay?" The kids left a surprise. On a central table sat a metal sculpture, a lattice of interlocking rings that, when spun, threw light in shifting geometry. Etched at the base, for what we make. Beneath it, smaller, for who we become. "Your son's phrase," Maya said. "He wrote it on his palms before exams," I said, "to remember the order." I touched the sculpture. It was warm from sun. Grief didn't stab anymore. It lifted like a weight I still knew by heart. I had expected triumph. What arrived felt humbler. Alignment, the cogs finally meshing, without grind. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We need flour and early mornings more than marble. Lydia." Not a plea, a statement. I typed, "Proud of you." I deleted it and wrote, "Keep going." That was more honest. Maya watched me pocket the phone. The world intruding. An old chapter, still teaching, I said, nodding at the sculpture. "This helps. We're opening a night section for adults next term. Parents, veterans, anyone shut out of the daytime world," she said. "We'll need someone to build community around it." A patient tyrant. I thought of Ethan's clauses, the motel nights counting breath like pennies, the attic letter with my name. I thought of a bakery where a woman learned the weight of a till, and of a boy somewhere whose gift wouldn't have to wait for luck. "I can tyrant," I said, patiently. She laughed, low, precise. "Good. Walk with me." We crossed the atrium. A girl in a wheelchair raced her friend. 2 boys argued gently over code. A teacher balanced a box of microcontrollers like sacred bread. The building had a pulse you could feel in your wrists if you stood still. At the doors, evening warmed into gold. Families loaded projects into trunks, careful with things that looked fragile and were, in fact, sturdy. Maya faced me. "You've done something rare," she said. "You've made memory feed momentum." "I had help," I said, "from a stubborn dead man and a very alive team." She adjusted the skew of my tie, a quick, intimate correction that sent a yes through me I didn't need to apologize for. "Dinner?" she asked, not coy. "Soon," I said. "I'm finally in no hurry." On my way out, I passed Ethan's photograph again. "You won, son," I whispered, then corrected myself. "We're winning." Outside, the city sang its complicated lullaby, sirens, buses, laughter, a dog certain of its importance. The sign over the doors glowed, Walker Institute, open 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., scholarships available. The house, without sound, taught me how to hear. The motel taught me how to wait. Lydia taught me the cost of mirrors. Ethan left me a blueprint and a broom. The rest I learned in rooms like this, where failure is a verb and love is work with its sleeves rolled. I turned my collar to the breeze and walked toward a night that finally felt like a hallway, not a wall.